from leogilling.com, Jamaicans.com. This evening, we are streaming live from somewhere down in Miami, somewhere, I don't know where, 50-something, right? Anyway, this is part 2 of Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. We have some beautiful young ladies here. We have 2 to my right who were on the previous panel, and 2 to my left. I think they set that up real nicely. 2 to my left who were not on the original panel, but they have some really high-level stories to show us. The first lady, her name is?
Quadera Tiart.
Quadera Tiart. It's not Stuart, it's Tiart. And it's not Peart, it's T-E-A-R-T. And the next young lady?
Natasha Wright.
Natasha Wright. She got it right this time.
Yes.
And then the next lady to my right?
Susan Davis, a.k.a.
I don't think anybody heard you.
Susan Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next lady to the right, she's our hostess this evening.
The one and only Julie Manson. Don't mind me.
I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the last video went very well on social media. On one site we had 43,000 views, over 100,000 people reached. Happy for that. So I want you to, while you're listening, share it with your friends and your families, even your enemies. Share it. Just share on your profile. This evening we are going to be talking about domestic violence, sexual abuse in the home to these fine young ladies who were pretty small, youthful when it happened. Am I right, ladies?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to be asking some questions this afternoon, this evening, and they will be answering me. But right off the bat, I want to give each person an opportunity to speak deeply about their journey as they grew up. Tell us, where are you from, Miss Tiart?
I am from Miami, Florida.
She's from Miami, Florida. That's where we are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And tell us your journey. Tell us your journey.
So my relationship with sexual abuse, sexual violence actually didn't happen in my home. It happened when I was 17 years old with friends from my neighborhood that I knew. And I thought were my friends, and I was actually gang raped by about 5 boys in my neighborhood who I grew up with. We had always lived in the same neighborhood together.
And they planned this?
I do not want to say they planned it because I don't know, but it would seem so that they planned it. So my best friend came over to my house that night, and I think this part of the story is very important because sometimes people think that maybe something they did was wrong and they deserved it. So my best friend came and slept over at my house that night, and I had the key to my room window forever and a day and never used it. But this night I decided to use it, and we snuck out to go meet the guys that we were seeing at the time. And those guys who we snuck out to see, we went literally like around the corner from my house because we are all in the same neighborhood, and they were drinking. I won't say the drink, but they were drinking, and I'd never drank before, and they offered me a drink, and I was like, okay, I don't know if I really want to do this. And they were like, no, it's harmless, go ahead. Now, what was in the drink I didn't know until years later. I figured out that the drink actually had the date rape drug in it. My friend was not present with me. She had went like a few houses down with her boyfriend at the time. And I was there alone with who we thought were my friends. So I was drinking, and probably within a matter of minutes, it happened so quickly. It seemed like it took forever, but it happened so quickly within a matter of minutes. I was feeling woozy, and they took me in the house, and I could see what was happening, and I knew what was going on, but I couldn't move my body. There was nothing I could do. And so later in college is when I realized when my professor was explaining to me what the date rape drug is and how you react to it, that's when I was like, oh my God, I was date raped, because all of that time from 17 to probably about 25 or so, I had thought that I would always think to myself, why do I not have the same reaction when I drink now that I had on that night? And so I kind of blamed myself for that. So to go a little bit into the story a little bit more, because you said this is a no holds barred conversation, and I don't want anyone to think that this was just a little mishap and that, you know, it was something I wanted or expected. The things that they did to me, they took me into the room, into one of the boys' rooms, and his dad was actually there. Like, I could see that
his dad was there.
Yeah, I could see that his dad was there. Like, I could see everything, but I couldn't do anything. I just, you know, that part is really important. So I was aware that his dad was there, and I was talking. They kept trying to get me to quiet down. I knew his dad was there because the TV was on and the door was open. Now, whether his dad saw or not, I don't know. So there was about 5 of them. They took me into the room, and they each had their way with me. And then after they each had their way with me, and I was saying things like, no, stop, don't do this. But it was very slurred, you know, like it was more, what I probably thought I was saying, no, don't do this. It probably was more like, no, stop, don't do this. And then after they had their way with me, then they decided to have more of a good time. Like they were having a good time. And they decided to take objects and put them inside of me. And it was just, I remember when one of them tried to take a brush and put it inside of me, I was like, no, stop, don't do that. Why are you doing that, you know? And then I guess I was making so much noise that they decided to, like, it was too much, and they decided to take me out of the house. And when we went outside, it didn't stop there, because then there was another guy who I also thought was my friend. There was another guy who came out from his house, and he decided he was going to get into the action. They were like, oh, you know, she's still, you know, out of it. You can get into the action. And he wanted me to give him oral sex, but right outside, like on the car in front in the dark, because it was like probably 2 a.m. or something like that. And I was making so much noise, I guess, that he was just like, no. And he had a football in his hand, and he took the football and threw it at my head. And so there was just a lot of disrespect, a lot of tormenting. And then finally, when my friend came back, I don't know if the guy that she was with knew what was happening, if it was a part of the plan for them to keep her away or something. But when she came back, I was just, by that point, I guess maybe subconsciously I knew what was happening to me. Mm-hmm. And I was just in tears, and I just couldn't stop myself from crying. And she just kept asking me, what happened? What happened? What was going on? And I couldn't get my words together enough to tell her what happened. But finally, when we got home and I slept it off a little bit, I was able to wake up and tell her what happened. Now, what happened after that, I didn't share the story, because what I saw happening after that was all of these guys, because my friends decided, we didn't decide to go to adults like we should have. We, or my friends, I should say, decided to take it amongst themselves and go defend me and go defend my honor. And what I saw happening, it was like a scary movie to me. I saw everybody's life flashing before our eyes. I saw my friends going to jail. I saw my friends, because they had all of these weapons. Like, they were just so upset, so mad. One of them had a machete. The other one, they were like, no. And so I just saw all of this. And then the boys were outside of the house. And it was like, you know, girls confronting guys. And I remember sitting in the car feeling so small, looking at everything that was going on, and everybody was like, every time I think about it, everyone looked giant size. And I just looked like this little tiny insignificant thing. I felt so small, like in a corner. And then my friend looked at me because the guys kept saying, we didn't do that, we don't do that, we don't know what you're talking about, denying it and looking at me with fierce eyes and like, you know, it felt like bullying. And I just said, no. My friend looked at me one final time and she said, did anything happen? I need you to tell us now. And I said, no, nothing happened.
That's because you wanted to kill it.
I just wanted it all to stop.
So after that stopped there, did you do any kind of processing of this? How did you deal with it after?
I never thought about it again until I was 25.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you because there are some questions that I want to ask. What's your journey?
My journey, I do feel like it's a journey. For me, my sexual abuse started when I was 5 or 6 years old. I can't quite remember what age, but I know it was between those age ranges. And it was with my choir director at church. So how the first incident happened, it was numerous incidents. I can't remember how many. Quite frankly, I can't even remember up until what point it was. I would say probably continued for a few years before it stopped. But he was friends with my next door neighbor's grandmother. And one day I was at their house, we're playing like kids do, we're all around the same age range. And there was a room that I usually take to go through that room, go under the veranda, hop over the fence to my house. So as I'm going through the room, he was in the room and he's sitting in a chair. And of course, it's someone I'm familiar with, like I know him from church. He's always at my neighbor's house. So as I'm coming through the room or I'm running through the room, he asked me to come sit on his lap. So I sat on his lap, and when I did that, he started to like, just kind of like gyrate his legs a little bit. So for me, I thought it was a playful thing to do. Yeah, exactly. So we're playing, and what I felt like was like playing, and I started laughing. But internally, I felt like even though I was that young, I knew that something was wrong. Like something was wrong about it, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't really have the words or the education or the maturity to really understand like what that was. So as he was doing that, I started laughing, and I was like, oh, when I felt that feeling of like something's not right here, I was like, oh, I'm going home. So as I hopped the fence over to my house, I saw my mom outside. She was talking to one of the other neighbors, and I was about to tell her what just happened because I felt like intuitively like something was wrong. And I was like, Mom, and she said, don't you see I'm talking?
Yes, that's how parents
And so that moment just shut it down for me. It was almost as if, okay, well, I'm not going to talk about this. Maybe I shouldn't even have the conversation with her at all. And then the other time, I can't really tell you like sequentially how all these things happen, but I just knew that there was another time where it was just him and I, or somehow maybe he was watching me one day, while my parents were at work. And I remember laying on the bed and him masturbating and ejaculating and me seeing white semen on the bed and wondering, what is that? But like I remember like my underwear was down, he was ejaculating, I saw the semen, and that was the first time I've ever seen anything like that. So of course I'm like wondering what is this? And then there was another incident where he would play with me in the bathroom. Now as I talk about this, I can't remember him specifically saying, don't tell your parents or never say anyone. I've heard stories of other people who have gone through childhood sexual abuse, and there's a conversation about, well, don't tell anyone because, I might do this to you, or they won't believe you, or whatever the case may be. I don't remember him actually having that conversation with me, but I knew not to say anything. because when I go to church on Sundays, he's right there. He's leading the choir. He's getting into spirits. He's friends with the pastor. He's someone who's respected within the religious community.
You must tell us though that this all happened in Jamaica.
Yes, so this happened in Jamaica.
Where are you from?
I'm from Kingston.
In Kingston. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of church was it?
It was a Church of God. Yeah. So my next door neighbor, he was raised by his grandmother. We were about the same age, and so his grandmother would always want. She's always like, "You need to come to church.
Right.
You need to go to church." So it's like.
She talk patois.
Yeah, I talk patois. I am Jamaican. But she was always like, "Oh, you need to go to church." Because my parents were religious, but they didn't feel like they had to go to church every Sunday. But my next door neighbor, his grandmother, she was like, "You go in every Sunday." And
Have you ever met this man again?
So I know that he's still close friends with the family. I'm friends with the family, and he's still close friends with them. They don't know.
They don't know?
No, they don't know about that part of the story. I never really told anyone until I told my mother when I was 21 years old. That was the first time. I think it was really about me moving here, going through a transitional time in my life, and just really not feeling like I could connect with people. And just feeling like there was this part of myself that was so disconnected from this vibrant person that I always knew myself to be. So, when you're in a new space and a new environment where you don't have that close-knit support group of family and friends anymore, now it starts to make you, go a little bit deeper into yourself and then memories start coming up. Things that you had suppressed.
Are you seeking to resolve it? Are you seeking any way to resolve it? Or are you feel resolved already? Where are you with it right now?
For me, I feel resolved in some aspects. I feel that obviously there's different layers of things that has to be processed. But for me, once I started to just go within myself more, and my spirituality and spiritual practice was really helpful with that for me. It's just going into meditation and seeing the perpetrator and just visualizing myself saying, "I forgive you." That was a huge step for me. It was very difficult for me to do that, and I tried to do it on repeated occasions.
You saw him?
Yeah, like I visualized him.
Oh, you visualized him?
Like I visualized,
have
like
you
he's
ever
sitting.
seen him?
I haven't seen him since then. Physically, no.
Okay.
I have never seen him again.
What if you see him now? What would happen?
I don't know. It's funny because, like I said, he's still friends with my the family that used to live next door to me, and I've seen him being tagged in their social media pictures. And then I look at this man through social media, and I'm like, if anyone knew who you were, if anyone, I should tell somebody, let them know that you're not this wonderful man that people think that you are.
Yes.
But
do you think that if you confront him, that would make you feel any better?
I don't know. Okay. I honestly, I can't tell you that. I can't say yes or no.
But you have you don't have any issues to resolve right now because you have already dealt with it. You dealt with it spiritually, and you just,
right.
Okay. Right.
I mean, I will say I've certainly thought about, well, what if I did go face to face with him and say, why did you have that conversation, like, why did you do this to me?
Because you know that you're not the only one, right? You're not.
Oh no, absolutely not. And I feel like it was once I got to a certain age is when the abuse stopped, because it's like now you're too old.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I used to see him with other young children, and I think to myself, he is probably doing the same thing to them. But once again, like, I didn't have my voice enough to talk about it, to tell anyone. And so in a way, I feel like if I had said anything at that time, I could have helped someone else not go through that process. And even now, like, who knows? Like, I think it's definitely like a sickness that they have that allows them to even want to do something like that to young children. So I don't even know what's going on from that perspective now, but maybe in this conversation, I might dive deeper into maybe doing something like that while he's still alive. That
was your only experience with any kind of sexual abuse from Jamaica, right?
Yes.
All right. Great. Thank you. I'll come back to you to have a whole heap of questions.
Okay.
We have a young lady who joined us a little bit late, but better late than never, right?
True that.
And one of the things that we set up front was this is a no holds barred conversation.
Okay.
So we're giving each person 5 minutes to talk about their journey, and you tell us what your journey will. We'll come back to questions and so forth. And so I want to put you on the spot right now.
Let me know for which story.
Let me know for the story, yes. So I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I have had multiple experiences with being sexually abused, and it's always had been with someone that was either a family member or somebody in my neighborhood.
If we're going no further,
that I knew.
you thought Pato?
All the time.
Just want to know.
Yeah, we can do it in a photo if you want.
Yes, sir. No,
I want them to be able to understand.
All right. So where in Jamaica are you from?
Kingston, Franklin
Kingston?
Town.
Why is everybody from Kingston? 1, 2, 3.
Everybody's from Kingston.
Manchester. All right. So the people from Kingston and Miami, they don't know what Peanut Water is.
That country too. That's what I'm saying when I want to get rid of it.
And this is actually not a funny discussion, ladies and gentlemen. We're just making sure that everybody's okay with their lives. You just have to deal with it, right?
No, we have to laugh.
So go further. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Julie and I spoke about this briefly last week, how you don't get to deal there in Jamaica. There's no coping mechanism for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, where children, if they go through something traumatic, there is never anyone that you could go to and say, this happened to me, and feel like you're going to be heard or somebody's going to listen to you. You learn to shut up, sit down, be quiet. You don't have a voice. So usually when stuff happens, and that it wasn't just the sexual stuff. It was like all the violence and the killings that you would see as a child.
See?
Yes.
You?
Yes.
Okay.
I've watched people gotten burnt alive, watched people get shot and killed in front of me, so watch people get shot on the street in front of Vauxhall, and we're walking around looking, oh, look on the wall in that bed. And it's just like, okay, here's the bus, you get on the bus and you go to school. And you don't know that when you get older, that stuff is going to affect you, because nobody talks about psychological issues in Jamaica. It doesn't come up. When I was growing up, I didn't know what a therapist was, or if there was a psychologist. You learn about that stuff when you come here.
So tell us about your actual experience with sexual abuse.
I can't say when was the first time. I think I was around 4. I remember my uncle had a half-brother that would come to visit, and he started the hide-and-seek game with me and my younger brother. And the house is built on stilts, and he would tell my brother to go hide in a different place, and I thought, like, he's going to tell me to go hide somewhere else, but we were always hiding together under the house in the dark, where nobody could see us. And that's where he would fondle. Then there was an attempted rape there with her son.
With whose son?
With the woman's son.
Oh my.
That didn't even live in the house, but would come to visit. And locked me in the house one day, and chasing around the house, I had to lock myself into the bathroom. And Jamaica, you share house with people. So the next door neighbor was next door, and I think they kept saying, Karen, you're all right, because I was like, come off of me, let me go, that whole thing. I was fortunate that day that they came home early. And when they came, all the windows were locked, all the doors were locked, they couldn't get into the house. And they were like, later on they came to me and said, the woman and her daughter said, what was going on in the house? Did he touch you? All that stuff. But my previous experience told me to keep your mouth shut, because they're not my family, they're not my blood, and the way I was being treated in that house, I did not feel safe, because I also got molested by one of her daughters.
What daughter?
Her daughter was 17 and I was 10. And her sister walked in on us with her on top of me, and Alicia said, come out! And that was the end of it. She didn't tell her mom, so she had to been, other sister had to been 16. So she saw it, nobody ever mentioned it. I think I lived with her for 2 years.
So that's the first time I'm hearing the one about the girl molesting or using another girl.
No, she climbed on top of me and was grinding me and basically told me to shut up and don't move.
It's more frequent than you think. Because I'm sorry. Because one of the things when girls get abused, they act out. And part of it, either you break the cycle of abuse, but in their minds they don't know how to do that, so they act out what they've been taught. So it's way more common than you think.
What have you done about all of this that has happened to you?
Well, I consider it fortunate that two of the people, the half uncle or whatever you would call him, he ended up getting tortured when they found him. And I would only suspect that wherever he was in the country, he was doing it to somebody else's kid, and they found him and they plucked out his eyes, his fingernails, and all that. The guy that tried to rape me, he got killed. The other two, on my way to school, I couldn't tell you what happened to them. And I have an uncle that is still my mother's brother, that I don't see him often, but we had a situation where Thanksgiving, where I had to go spend Thanksgiving with him for 15 years because he was always invited to Thanksgiving, so I would never go there.
So your family don't know?
Oh, they know. Because once I never spoke about my abuse until I was like maybe 21.
I see.
And then it was like diarrhea of the mouth. I was telling her how I was watching Oprah one time. I think it was like 1990 or something when she first started, and she said something about that she was raped when she was 13.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this woman's on TV talking about it. It was the first time I ever realized, wow, she has no shame.
Right.
You could actually tell people.
Yes.
And she was on TV sharing it with everybody. And I think I just got diarrhea of the mouth after that and was just like...
I think that's how she, Julie, introduced me to you.
Oh, yeah.
Me, Karen, aka diarrhea.
So, and when the first time I ever told my mom about it, I was 15, we were staying at my grandmother's house. The same uncle had a bed in my grandmother's bedroom so that when he was in the area, he wouldn't have to go home. And some circumstance, and my mom had to move back in with my grandmother, and I was like, I'm not staying here. And they're like, why are you not staying? I said, I'm not staying here, I don't want to stay here. And then that's when it finally was like starting to unravel. I was 15 and I was just sick and tired of people telling me I had no control over my life and what I could do. I ended up going to my aunt's house for like 6 months, and then when my mother never did give her money to keep me, she sent me back to my grandmother's house.
So why do you think your mom sent you there?
Because my mom always sent me to go live with people. It was one less responsibility that she had to deal with. I was the only girl, as far as she's concerned. The boy can run wild, but with me, she actually had to parent, and she didn't want to, so she would send me to places with other people who felt, I guess she thought, if she over there, someone have to worry about her.
How do you feel now versus before you heard Oprah Winfrey's story? Or do you feel resolved now?
No, because somebody else is still alive.
Oh, I see. The other two.
Yeah, the other 2 or 3 or 4. My godfather, the 2 boys that stopped me on my way to school when I was in the 3rd grade.
Did they actually have sex with you?
No,
Okay.
my godfather attempted to have sex with me while his wife was in the same room and had a pillow over my face to keep me from breathing.
And what
And when
did his wife know about it?
When I jumped up out of the bed and was like, duppy, 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 because that's what I thought it was. The room was dark and I couldn't breathe, so I thought something was trying to kill me. And when they turned on the light, the 2 of them were standing there asking me if I was okay. And she had left and went to the country, and he came and picked me back up one time to bring me over to the house. And that's when he started showing me, if you ever said, dog, have sex, show me them have sex. Oh, you need forbid. Go, I'd take a shower, come, and he would start telling me. He groomed me for about a year. And then he finally made his move. And his wife actually, when she found out that he was coming to get me, she came to my mom's house and she saw my stuff in the house and she said, Karen, you need to come and get your stuff. She said something to my mom, I don't know what she said, because she had 2 daughters and they weren't there. And then as I got older, I started putting it together.
Right.
That's why they were in the country.
Step that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that I know.
Right. And she walked in on the final day, because when I came to pick up my stuff, he was there and he was laying on the bed and he took out his penis and he was basically jerking off, masturbating.
It's okay. It's okay. No holds barred.
And the wife happened to just walk right in at that moment, and she said, "Get your things and get out."
So she kicked him out.
No, I don't know. I don't know what she
So
did.
you
She told me
told
to
her.
get my
You.
stuff.
So she's
But
blaming-
not, no, I don't
Okay.
think that's what she was doing. She walked in, she saw what was happening, and I think that's why she came to my house and told my mom to come get my stuff, and
I
basically
see.
to say I was not allowed to come back over to the house.
And we can look at that one.
And he was a police
Yeah,
officer,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
was a cop.
Because
He was a police officer.
I could say, I could say, she is protecting you. That's
Yes.
one.
Right.
Or she doesn't want the secret to come out. It's two
Right.
different ways.
Yeah.
I know about it, so I'm okay with my husband, right? So I don't want you to come and mess up.
She probably stayed with him.
So,
Yeah.
try-
Yeah.
try
Well,
to
no,
protect-
she didn't
protect
stay
you.
with him. I saw him when I was 12, and I was picking up this little girl from Alpha Prep, and I saw him pull up. He had a little girl with him. She was about 4 years old, and I think that was his new child. And he saw me, and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I remember you, and I remember everything you ever did to me."
At age 12, you said that to him?
At age 12, I said that.
Great. Sue, last week at the, I'm going to come back to you too, okay?
Okay.
I have a lot of questions. Last time when we spoke, you actually announced on the show for the first time in your life that you had some issues, right? You had some. I actually asked her, ladies and gentlemen, to come as a balanced person on the show. And when the day of the show, she said, "Leo, I can't be balanced." And so she announced on the show that she had some issues, but she didn't go into details. So I need you to tell us exactly what the details are.
Okay, well, for me, and it's not that it was the first that I'd come out with it, because I thought I had dealt with it my way. It's just that I hadn't really vocalized it as I did on the show explicitly. Over the years, I've written about it and I've spoken about it. But for some reason, people tend to, maybe I spoke about it in the third person.
That is
as opposed
exactly
to the
right.
first
Because I
person.
read your book and I read the poem and I didn't get it that it was you.
Right.
Right? So,
okay.
yeah.
So I owned it.
Yes.
That day, and I realized so. And unlike my sisters that went before me, I did not go through or ever went through the process of being actually penetrated. So for me, mine was molestation, and it started. It's various people, but the angst that I had with it more than anything else was the fact that it tended to have been with persons who I held in high esteem.
Yes.
Persons who were much more mature than myself. It wasn't people my age group. Thankfully, it was nobody in the family, but it was people who were close.
So tell us who the people
So
are.
I'm coming to
Okay,
it.
thank you.
You gave me 5 minutes.
All right.
First I can remember was when I was in primary school. Yes. And there was a time when the teachers or the principal would ask for persons to come down to their office to clean the office or stuff like that. And I remember going, thinking nothing about it. 3 or 4 girls would go down, and I would go down. I've been called down to clean, so I'm cleaning. I noticed there were other girls that were off. At first I didn't think anything of it. They were off with him, but I didn't think anything of it. Until once when I went, and I was then approached. And it was, the fondling or the tits, and you're starting to blossom, and all this inappropriate, and it felt so weird and inappropriate. I thought, oh my God. Again, I don't know why. I know it wasn't right. Didn't feel good. Didn't feel good about it, but I never shared it with anyone, any adult, anyway. What happened is that I got angry and scared. I'd be going to school maybe on a Friday, and I'm thinking, oh God, don't let them be asking for people to go down to the principal's office today. Oh Lord, please don't let it be me. And so that's when it started to affect me. And I remember there were times, and I think this person realized that I was so uncomfortable with it.
Is the principal you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the principal.
Okay, so it's the principal that's...
In the principal's office, the principal would ask us to come down, and that's what would take place in his office. Mm-hmm. After a while, he started to ask for specific people. So Susan wasn't called, and I thought, okay, thank you, Jesus. But then I would worry about the other persons who were going, mm-hmm. and or those who were volunteered to go, make it even worse. And that went on, and thought not much about it, and I went on in my life. I'm like, okay, maybe this is what goes on in life. I don't know. Got bigger, and the first I remember too was my dad died. I think I was about 15, and of course, persons coming over to the house to, share the condolences and caring for the family, and one grieved person, and he was a minister, was in a room and said, asked if he wanted to meet with us one-on-one to talk us through it. So I think maybe my siblings had gone before me, don't recall, but I know I went into the room with him. He closed the door and I was there, and okay, and he's trying to console me, and this isn't easy and whatever. But even within the context of that, he came over and started to just explore the contours of my body, I call it, and it felt so terrible.
This is the pastor.
This is the pastor, and I knew it wasn't right, and it just felt so inappropriate, and I broke away, and I came out, and this happens a lot. I think once I'm not comfortable, I've always been able to break away, and because I do that, I'll tell you what transpires from that. Another situation I had with a pastor was I had to go by that person's house one night because we were going on some trip the following day or something. And so I was told to stay over at the parsonage with the pastor and his wife. And I'm in the guest room and I'm fast asleep. And in the middle of the night, a bit like you, I just felt feeling a body over me, a naked body next to me. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm thinking I'm dreaming. But then I realized I woke up. And there was this pastor, naked, lying in the bed next to me. Pastor. And I started to scream. His wife was in their room, and they had just had a child, and the child was up, and I'm like, what was going on? And I think when I started to scream, and he held my mouth, but I was fighting with all I had. And he got up and he slammed the door and ran out. Of course, I never slept for the rest of the night. And I'm thinking, how do I deal with this? How do I go on this trip with them? And I got up the morning feeling rather uncomfortable. None of this did I, as close as me and my mom were, and I knew it's something I could talk to her about. At that point in my life, for some reason, I'm thinking, is it me? What am I doing wrong? Am I encouraging this? I was always one who they call mature for my age. I grew up pleasantly plump. So unlike my peers, the one who got my bust out first, and I'd always hippie and plump and everything, and I'm like, I just seem to attract these maniacs. And I kept thinking it was me. What it did was it got me to be so protective of those around me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that when we talk about it, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about, I don't know, I'm sure I'm not the only person who went through this. But I got so protective of the people around me. And so in doing that, I was seeing others being abused. So sometimes, and that affected me, and because I know, okay, this person was inappropriate with me. So I'd watch their every move. And then in watching their every move, I could see that they were being inappropriate with other persons too. And I wasn't sure how to process it. I wasn't sure, is this the done thing? Again, these are people in power. These are people, you're supposed to look up to them. You're supposed to say, yes, sir. They're not doing anything wrong. And I got, when you talk about low self-esteem, I went through it. When you talk about self-blame, I went through it. It affected me in so many ways, in terms of being sociable. There are places I didn't want to go, so of course to the adults I'm looking like I'm too defiant, or, you don't listen when adults talk, but it's because I don't want to go in there, because I know what's going to happen if I go in there, or I don't want to see that person, so I don't want to go there. So I was that child that was totally misunderstood, and it was because of all I went through. There are several incidents like those, but I think the one that really triggered and really got me to even at that time say something to my mom, and God bless her.
Anthony is another pastor. Is it another pastor?
No, it wasn't another pastor, but it was an adult again, and somebody that was pretty close to the family. And this time, again, I was at the house, showered, got out of the shower. As soon as I got out of the shower, and I'm not even sure if the door was locked or unlocked, I don't know. It totally was closed when I went into the shower. But when I got out, stepping out of the shower and coming out, there's this person just standing in the doorway, just looking at me. I mean, I froze. They're just standing there, and their masculinity,
naked,
all erect, and just standing there. But what to this day, what I remember was that look in his eye. It was as though he was like an animal. Mm-hmm. It was like, I'm here to get you kind of thing. And I was so frightened. And of course, we were alone at home, and I was like, what? There's one way in, one way out, and he's standing in the doorway. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to happen. And again, I fought, and I managed to get past him. I dragged my clothes, I ran. I mean, I must have been partway on the road naked at one point, because I just know I'm running and I'm putting on clothes, and I'm running and I'm putting on clothes. I got on a bus and I headed to my brother, one of my brothers. And when I went there, I was hysterical. He didn't know what was happening. He couldn't get a word out of me. And he's shaking me, and he's like, what happened? What happened? I think he suspected what might have happened. He started to call names. Is it Tom? Is it Jerry? Is it da-da? Is it da-da-da-da? And he's calling names, and I'm just shaking my head. And then he happened to call my other brother when he saw the state I was in. By the time my other brother came, and I shared with them what happened, they were livid. Okay, we're going now. We're going to call. We're gonna kill him. We're gonna kill him. And I remember all that went through my head is, oh my God, this is going to affect this family. It is going to affect this person. I'm gonna be seen as a liar. And all that is going through my. I'm processing that. And I remember going on the floor, and I'm stomping and I'm saying, please, please, don't say anything to them. Don't go. Don't do anything. Don't. And they couldn't understand where I was coming from, but I guess this desperation in me trying to say to them, no, don't do anything. They gave in, and I said, oh, and they said, okay, well, we're gonna have to call mom. Call mom now. And I called mom, and when I did, she dealt with the situation immediately. She got me out of the situation. She dealt with it as the woman she is, in a very professional manner, no animosity, and got out. And I realized then that had I approached her from the very first time I was going through this is no doubt how she would have handled it anyway. And at that point, I remember when I said it to her, she was like, she kind of sighed and said, oh my God, I spent all my life trying to protect you from anything like this. And I never thought that I would hear that. So I know that kind of cut to the core for her. So that's really my story. But as I said the last time in part one, pain is pain. Mm-hmm. And when you feel violated, and when molestation and rape are no respect of persons, so definitely not. So
has what you've been through, because you have a different kind of drive, do you think that this has helped to drive you in the direction where you are?
For sure. especially in terms of my advocacy for children, girls especially. It started with girls, but now it's youth on a whole, because nobody is safe anymore. But definitely, and I tell this story a lot, and about feeling my sense of winning over these perpetrators, in a sense, is my protection. It started with my sister. Once everything started to happen to me, I have one sister, and I did everything to protect her. I mean, she never knew this, but going certain places, I wouldn't allow her to be alone. I was just like this. I was her guardian angel, put it that way, without her knowing. And the first time I really shared was when I wrote my first book, and some of the pieces in there that dealt with this kind of situation. And I didn't want her to just read the book and again, like, anybody's wondering, is it me or not? So I had sat the family down and I said to them, look, I've put this book together. There's some pieces in there that are quite deep and quite touching. Yes, they are my story. You probably know or didn't know about it, but let me know. And my sister sat there and she was like, what? And even though at some point she had changed school and had to go and live with an uncle of ours, and she was like, oh my gosh, I had never had any experience like that. Uncle would never have done that to me. And how did you? And she just to see the look in her eye and the amazement that something like that really happened to people or happened to you. And I felt, okay, thank you, Lord. She never had to experience that. And I've had that experience over the years with a lot of other persons, family and non-family alike, where I'm just in this protective mode and whatever I can do to share and to protect. So this for me is another vehicle of getting it out there to others who are in the same position.
Thank you, Sue. I'll get back to you too. Our hostess this evening, her name is Julie Mansfield. And I thought I'd take a different approach with Julie, because we've heard her stories over and over, and I want to ask her a particular question, and everybody can join in. Julie, I know the hell that you've been through. What is it that you think that make men do this? Because it is a widespread man thing. Obviously, all of you are here. What is it that causes men to do this?
That is $1 million question. I've said this before, of my mother's 8 brothers, 4 are abusers, right? Some of their own children, impregnated their own children. So this is, I would love to be able to say, I'd pay $1 million really right now for someone to dissect the brain to say why this happens, and so frequently, and so pervasively in one family over another family. Like, is it a learned behavior? Is it something? Is it genetic? Is it done to them and so they do unto others? Like, what is it that make them do what? And it's not just men. Sadly, it's not just men. I was abused by women equally.
Oh, you didn't tell me that one.
Oh, child, please. Like I told you last time.
I want to hear this one.
You need more than 5 minutes.
Tell me.
Okay, so and this I've never spoken of this because I love my stepfather. I love him dearly. He's more than a father to me. I would lay my life down for him today. And if this gets back to him, it's going to hurt him, right? But it's my truth, and I have to tell it.
It's your truth.
And I have to tell it.
Absolutely.
So his niece, Monica, would Monica, you know who you are. She would come and stay with us, which is not uncommon in Jamaica.
Right.
It's not,
this
one come and live with you, or just sleep with you, or what have you.
Absolutely.
So she would come and sleep at our house. And I remember waking up one night with her mouth on my vagina. And I must have been maybe 10 years old. So
How old was she at the time?
She's a good 10, 15 years older than I am. She's probably older than I am. But So it's not just women who are predators, not just men who are predators, it's women as well. And it sort of begs the question, what happened to her that she turned around and did it to me? Is it that it's a homophobic society where she couldn't be free to be who? These are the questions that I have in my mind. Is it that she's afraid to be who she really naturally is because of the homophobia in Jamaica? Or was this done to her and she was therefore experimenting on me? I don't know. The answers to those questions I'll never know.
How did you deal with that the next day and the next day and the next day?
Pray to God she would die and never have to come back and sleep at the house. That's it, because previous experiences taught me it's no use in saying anything. What's the use in saying anything? Ain't nobody gonna do nothing. You just gonna have to suffer through this. And so I did my best to sort of, and when she came over to sleep, mind you, we didn't have the luxury of multiple beds or bedrooms or what have you, so we were sharing beds. So I would do my best to sort of make sure I wasn't laying next to her. So it became a cat and mouse kind of game. But then when it wasn't enough for her to experiment on me, she had her brother experiment on me. So, I don't know.
That's your cousin? The boy, the man, the boy?
No, they're all step relatives. They're step relatives. So we're not blood relations. But again, I said this before. I remember my therapist asked me how I survived. This is, I'm too goddamn stubborn to let anybody win.
Have you ever confronted Monica?
I've never confronted her. The last time I saw her, I left Jamaica 30 some odd years ago, and I saw her once since at her mother's funeral, and I felt like pushing her in the grave. But it wasn't an appropriate place or time.
we would find you.
But I really did feel like just pushing her in the grave.
Anyone else can answer that question? What do you think goes through these people's mind? There's an argument about once you become older and you have consensual sex, some people can have different opinions about whether or not it's consensual.
Let's go to the. And I don't want to get all academical and all that stuff, right? But here. There are two types of predators.
Right.
There's a situational predator and there's a preferential predator.
Okay, help me there.
Right? So the situational predator, if put in a situation, will pounce. But then there are those who prefer young kids.
Yeah, these are the ones that I have a problem with.
And they will never change. And then, piggybacking on that is what makes a person, man or woman, look at a child and sexualize that child.
Right. That's the question I'm asking.
How do you sexualize
that is exactly the question I'm asking.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
Yes.
How do you make that?
Yeah.
All right. And so, we talked about. Let me give the other persons a chance to respond to the question that I asked. Yeah, you wanna respond to it?
Honestly, I feel like it's kind of what everyone was saying, and you were also saying. I feel a part of it is they've gone through that experience themselves, and I also feel like the way in which our society is such that things are sexualized. Women are sexualized, kids are sexualized in just marketing, but at the same time, it's like on the one hand, you're saying we're going to over-sexualize things to sell products, but then on the other hand, you're saying be pious, be modest, don't be promiscuous, whatever the case may be, with men or women, even though in some aspects it's like, oh yeah, men can sleep with other women, but it's still like, it's not normalized for you to sexualize children.
Absolutely.
But if you look at commercials, or if you look at, certain marketing material, kids are sexualized.
Because I'm thinking about it, and I'm saying to myself, a man looking at an 8-year-old girl and sexualize him, right, in his mind, how does he get there? I may be abnormal, right? But
please stay that way.
How do you get there? And I really want this answer. Then one there who has an answer for me. How do you get a man 25, 30-year-old, 40, 50-year-old looking at a young lady 8, 10 years old and make it make sense.
Can I chime in?
Yes,
for a little
please.
bit? So I have a daughter. She's 9 years old.
Yes.
And she watches a lot of Disney Channel, well, not so much Nickelodeon, but those kinds of channels. And I think Tasha makes a very good point. Natasha makes a very good point.
and the last name is
right. She makes a very good point about kids being sexualized, because there are so many shows that my daughter watches, and we have to have very deep, open conversations about them, where the creators of these shows that are on these channels are adults. The adults are dressing the kids. It upsets me a lot. Me and my friends, we have this conversation who have children. The adults are writing the shows. They write the scripts. They dress the kids. They put the kids in makeup. They do all of that stuff. So they're kind of setting the tone. And sometimes it makes me wonder, who are these adults who are writing these scripts for these kids and putting them in these clothes, having them kissing at 9 years old or 7 years old sometimes? Like, what are these things? And how do you expect them not to go back into their little circles and replicate what they just saw on television? So that leads me to your question, why do men or women do these things? So in my neighborhood, these young men, they were still boys, they were under the age of 18. They had teachers. Their parents were hardworking, by the way. So all of their parents were always at work. It's not like they came from horrible, rundown families. Their parents were always at work trying to give them the best, do what they were supposed to do. So a lot of times those young men and young women in the neighborhood had to fend for themselves, right? And they were left to adult themselves. And the only people that they had to teach them other things were kids that were older than them or someone in their 20s. So in that neighborhood, we would hear stories all the time of, oh, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? The ones I love is when people in my neighborhood would say, oh, such and such ran a train on her. Or she had sex with 5 guys. Oh, she's a hoe. Oh, she's a mutt. And so when my sister got older, I would say to my sister, don't get involved in that kind of conversation. Be very careful about who you're saying did what to who, because you may be calling that girl a mutt, but somebody could have spread a story about her. You don't even really know what happened. So be very mindful of that. So what makes men or women who are adults do these things? I don't think that there's any real excuse. I don't think that there's any real, I think we would have to go so far back in time to figure out what makes everyone do what they do. But I will say this, everyone is always dealing with something, and everyone has their own story. So we would literally have to interview like each person to figure out what's your story, and then that person has a story, and then that person has a story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I went to I know you want to say something, but I went to a church in July, and
the church manager can't tell you exactly where.
Exactly. It was a wedding or a funeral.
July 15th.
And so I went to pick up an award, right? And I had to sit there 3.5 hours before I pick up the award. So I had to listen to 3 different pastors, right? And one of them, a woman. And let me tell you this. When I left there, I was so angry. And what I was angry about was I did not remember that, because I hadn't been to church in a long time, right? In Jamaica. I did not remember that preachers take that Bible literally and preach that women should obey men, that women should be submissive And I sat there for 3.5 hours listening to this and got so mad. And when I was driving away, what made me more angry was the two ladies that were in the car with me were supporting the man, the pastors. And I'm saying to myself, okay, where did I miss this? What did I miss here? And so I had to think about it. And, I watch cowboy shows, right? I watch a lot of Westerns. And I watched how women are treated. Highly respected, but they don't have any brains.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have a voice. They didn't have voting rights, privileges. They couldn't serve on juries. When you go to a jury, it has to be 12 men. When you go to a home, right, the woman will open the door and said, welcome, my husband will be with you in a second. And she went and opened the library and sent this man in there to sit down and wait for her husband, and she disappears. That is what women are coming from. Now listen to this. In the Bible and pre-Christ, BC, this was worse because women were treated in the Bible as just as a donkey or a horse or a house or any piece of property. Okay? And so I started thinking, and you can share, I started thinking, I wonder if all of that coming down, breaking down the barriers of women, Seneca Falls and Susan B. Anthony getting in the middle, breaking down the barriers. And what we're seeing right now is remnants of what was, especially out in our little country where our laws are not really enforced with this. I wonder.
But it's not that the laws aren't enforced, it's that the laws themselves are ridiculous. In 2017, when you're policing what women wear over how women and girls are treated, we have a problem.
All right.
If you're going to tell me I can't go into a hospital
I know.
in a sleeveless dress while the men are raping and killing and pillaging, we got a problem.
But that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I am actually saying that is remnants of the power that men had over, and there's a little piece left now that we need to enforce. Because it looks like it's the law has to come in now, like they do in America. Because I'm very afraid of being lied on, saying that I raped somebody. I'm so afraid, right? Because you are looking at being thrown outside, don't have any opportunity to just go living inside of a community. You have to be going to the police and ask them, can I come live into this community? And you have a rap with you for the rest of your life. It's not like committing a murder. Rape is real, and it stays with that man for a long, long time. Now, why is it that it is not the same in our country? Is it because, yes?
It is absolutely a direct correlation. When you have the church dictating the laws, right? It's a problem because they're holding people to standards of a Bible that's written by man, right? So they're not looking at all the advances that have been made. That yes, women are equal. Yes, we weren't taken from no man's rib. Show me a man who's gonna burn anything from a rib. Like seriously. But when you have the church dictating the laws, the Prime Minister is calling for a day of prayer and fasting. The former Minister of Security is asking for divine intervention. Y'all keep praying while they keep praying, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You pray and they prey. There's a huge difference.
She had something to say.
Just to go back to earlier when you had asked the question about what makes they do what they do.
Yes.
In Egypt, before it became Egypt, it was called Kemet. For they documented almost everything they did. The people, it was like, I came here today, I went to Julie's house, I had wine. On the way outside, I see a rock, and I would write on it. Went today, So there was documentations of almost everything that went on day to day in people's lives. For 2,000 years, when it was women who was running, because the kings could only get their power by marrying a queen. So women were in charge. There has no documentation in Egypt for 2,000 years, no documentation of anyone being raped. So to tell me that we can have a society where rape is just going to become, and molestation is going to become an acceptable thing, that's false. The only other thing that I can think of after that is what they say scientifically for many black people or people who've gone through a lot of trauma is that your generational and your ancestral DNA with trauma gets passed down into, the next generation, and so forth. So for some people, like in my family, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer is a huge thing. It skipped everybody, my mom, my aunt, and all that stuff. When I was 21, I started having complications with cells and all this stuff. So you have about 12 women and only one, I'm the only one. So I believe that the trauma is the same way. And if it's in you, and if there are certain triggers that happen to some people, maybe it'll come out more. So you could carry a gene for something, but if you don't drink, smoke, whatever it is that triggers whatever cancer you're going to get, you probably never get it. But you might do certain things. So I'm thinking, are these people who are out, because remember, Jamaica was one of those islands where it was a buck break-in island. They had plantations specifically designed for breeding other slaves. They had plantations specifically designed where men...
What did you call it? Buck what?
Buck breaking. That's what they called it. They had plantations that they specifically brought men there, the biggest, strongest slaves, so that everybody else would obey, and they would sodomize them in front of everybody. So Jamaica has a huge history of rape and homosexuality.
So you're supporting what I'm saying, that it's a carried down.
I believe it's I believe it's in the gene. I mean, no more different than, how do you explain somebody wants to have sex with a horse?
Yeah, we have that too.
Yeah.
Donkey.
But you have that in Australia. There are certain places that are known for men having sex with animals.
Right.
Where did that come from? Because in Greece and Rome, that was a very common thing for them.
So I'm not really sure what I believe just yet. I need to do more work on it. But I do believe in our past lives and stuff like that. And sometimes I have to wonder, I don't know, did something happen to you in a past life, or are you reliving something right now? What's going on that would want you to do those things? But I also want to make the point that it's not just Christianity, because I was raised in the Nation of Islam. My parents are both Muslim, and they have to be more womanizers than anybody, any other religion that I know, actually. And they don't have the same tradition. They have the same traditions, but there are slight differences. But at the end of the day, it's still man before the woman, no matter what.
Like Julie said, I think it has to do a lot with the situational and the preferential. That's where it starts. And I think that's why forums like these are important. Today I was thinking about us and doing this, and I said, women with voices, women giving this thing a voice and taking it from under the rug. It has to start somewhere. Will it break in our generation? Probably not, but at least we have to set the ground for the next generation.
Well, I'm asking men, though. I'm asking men to join, though, because I was thinking I wrote an article the other day. I was saying, when slavery was abolished, when slavery against black men were abolished, it wouldn't have abolished if black men continued to try to end slavery. The white persons have to accept that slavery need to end because they have the power, right? They had the power. And so I am thinking that we need to recruit men to help us to speak on this.
All right, so I have an acronym for you now. You want to hear the acronym? You want to hear it? It's called MAN. Men Against Nastiness.
That sounds good.
I'm a man.
All
right, yes. I'm a man. I'm a part of Men Against Nastiness.
Well, I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
Let's start it. But we need to recruit men to speak on all of the damages that's been done before, and to speak on what's going on with the women today.
And this is a starting point.
It is.
Because they're hearing us and they're realizing that there are women out there who are strong enough and we're giving it a voice and we're talking about it. So it makes it easier for them to come. But they're looking at you. You know, getting in the middle of something like this.
Literally,
yeah. Literally.
I spoke about that before.
And so there are others like you out there who will come aboard and we welcome them. We need to get it out there. It is institutionalized. It is something, like we say, it's in the genes, it's going on. But like anything else, over time it can be broken.
It can be broken over time, and in Jamaica in particular, it's going to take a whole lot, and we have to look at our economic structure in Jamaica. We will never have any kind of meaningful dent in this until women can support their children on their own. Because when the mothers have to pimp those girls so that they can go to school, we have a problem. When they have to pimp them so they can eat, we have a problem. It will never end until we address the economic situation in Jamaica. Poverty is ridiculous, and I'm not saying that it is the all-being, but it is a major driving force. Yes, sexual abuse happens in every household, believe it. From uptown to the trench town.
Exactly.
Question for us. We do a lot of, well, you do a lot of speaking. Do you guys do speaking? Yes, you go out and speak.
No, make them talk. Yes, them going to talk.
Question is
certainly something I want to do more of.
The reason I'm asking is, so we get on this drive to speak to people and to we speak in front of 30, 40 mothers or fathers, whatever. And we bring the awareness to them that child sexual abuse is wrong. But then when they leave that forum, they go right back home.
Here's the importance of what we're doing.
Yes.
We look at statistics every day. Numbers are thrown at us every day.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are so much more than numbers.
I know 6 a week.
No.
Oh, the woman there.
But we're humanizing what happens.
Right.
We're giving voice to the trauma that follows sexual abuse, because we love to say it's just a little sex, get over it. It happened to me, I'm me, alright. You're not alright, you're angry like hell. So you're not alright.
Yeah.
So until we deal with the symptoms of sexual abuse, we have to acknowledge them, address them, treat them. Right? So when the good girl broke out and gone bad, she not just get up one day and decide, say, me want a man. What led her to that? Until we start addressing the symptoms and the long-term effects. And I'd love to be able to talk about some of our struggles to get to where we are. Because we never get up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to be fabulous Julie Mansfield. No, it took years of tears, of promiscuity, of shame, self-reject, self-abuse for us to be here. So we need to start addressing so that mothers can see that when you pimp your daughter, you are giving her long-term effects that will handicap her sometimes for the rest of her life. So we need to start talking about the effects of sexual abuse, not just what happened to us, but how it manifests in our lives 5 years later, 10 years later, 40 years later, sometimes 50, 60, 70 years later.
How it affects our
And
relationship.
you have to deal with the mom too. I have to tell this because I've been thinking about it the whole time I've been here. My first actual encounter with Jamaican culture, I was 15, 9th grade. My best friend is Jamaican. All my best friends are Jamaican.
I think you live in Miami, right?
And we were sitting there. She was like, oh, let's watch this movie. Let's watch this movie. And the first movie I ever seen was Dance Hall Queen. And the girl was I was like, what is she doing in the car with that old man? And she was like, oh, girl, that's just how it is in Jamaica. And I was like, in what? And that actually became one of my favorite movies. But I was just like, I don't understand. And I tell Natasha all the time that I have a tie to Jamaica for whatever reason, where I always think about the young girls, but when we're talking about the moms and they have to stop the effects of pimping your daughter, it's like there's just so much. There's such a huge cycle to be broken, because now you want to know, okay, well, what makes a man, what makes a mom?
Poverty. But not, and not only that, like what you're saying about like the young girl with the older man or the big man. It's like in my high school, once school was out at 2:30, there was a lot of girls who they were being picked up in Peugeots and SUVs, and they were 14 and 15 years old. And these are older men who work in politics, are professionals, and they come and they're picking up these young girls and they're buying them things or bringing them wherever. So that part of it too, and it wasn't really until I was talking to Julie about it when she was like, "Oh, what about these situations? This is also sexual abuse." And because I was raised in that culture, that's how much culture can be a blind spot in certain things that you see. Because I was raised in a culture where I would see young girls with older men, and it's like, okay, well, that's just what some of these girls do. I didn't realize how that is also, if they were in America, it would be considered statutory rape.
If it were younger than 18.
But these girls are in high school.
And in Jamaica, it actually is.
Right. But nobody does anything about it. And it's so normalized to the point where you see it and you turn a blind eye and you're like, that's just how it is. It doesn't really connect with you in a way that this shouldn't really be happening.
No, that's extremely dysfunctional.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Y'all don't want to let me into Jamaica.
Okay, question. And this is for everybody. Someone lost a limb, a foot, or both eyes through domestic violence. And they grow up having to do different things, but they adjust, right? They adjust to their lives, their new lives, whether it's on one hand they have or one eye, right? Is there anger within that person, as it is with you, with the women who have been abused at an early age? Is there that type of anger the same way, or is this a different type of anger?
I don't think we can't say about that. I think, okay, like that person, if they walk around harnessing that anger, I think at some point they have to learn, and they obviously, if they're still here, I think they have learned or are learning how to deal, how to cope, how to move through, how to, just deal with oneself. And I think fortunately the women sitting up here have found ways to deal with, confront, and heal. That's the word I'm looking for. And heal, or we would not be able to sit here talking
this is exactly why I'm coming up.
I'm not going to say we all heal.
That is exactly why I bring this up.
Yeah.
Do you still feel angry, or are you healed? Are you healing?
Healing.
I think I'm always in healing. But when I was younger, I was a very angry, and I would fight all the time.
Because of what you've been through?
I guess at the time I didn't know that.
Right.
Okay.
But because as I got older, when I started processing it, it's like, why was I always fighting with boys? Why was I always fighting with my brothers? Majority of the fights I had in primary school and secondary school was all boys. I had fights with some girls. I recently had a WhatsApp class from DQ, and one of the first things they asked me, "Karen, you still a fight?" I was like 7th, 8th grade. And I said, "Oh, she the one to pick up the chair and bust Joseph over the head with it." And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm fighting now, but I'm doing a different kind of fighting."
Right.
All right.
But I think for me, one of the first things I did from really small was to decide that I would not have children. Because to me, I felt like children in Jamaica was no step above women, they're like the lowest of the low. They have no rights. They have no control over anything. And my thing was, my mom used to say all the time, if whenever I wanna, I could I do this, I could I do that, whatever. And it stayed with me. And I was just like, I would never have a child, and I never wanted to raise it in this family. Because who would I leave my kid with if I had to go to college? I didn't trust my mother. I didn't trust my grandmother. I did not trust anyone around me in my family to look out and protect a child because they couldn't protect me.
It's powerful.
But, and you know what, that's so beautiful because, and I've said this a million times before, is that subconsciously or consciously, even as a child, you decided you were going to break that cycle. And that's something we don't do. We don't look at what we hated in our childhood and then not visit that on our kids. We just keep the cycles going. So kudos to you.
Okay, so here's a big question for you. Relationships, your current relationships.
Which one? I'm just curious.
The reason I went here is there's a singer by the name of Queen Ifrica, and I interviewed her one day and I asked her about the song called Daddy. I don't know if you guys know about the song. And her response to me was, Leo, not me, her, that, in reference to it, not me, Leo, but sometimes you see a woman in a relationship with a man or married, and they can't get along. Not because of the man, but because of the woman. And it's probably, but she's not recognizing that either, right? But she has had so much rough time as a young child growing up with men raping and abusing and all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to, she knows that she wants to get married, but she can't keep the relationships strong enough because she's always going back over her mind about the things that happened to her. So I'm asking you guys about your experience with the relationships that you have now or in the past.
Let's just say past.
Everybody's a past. Oh my God.
No, go to relationships in the past.
In the past. Oh Lord. Okay.
Well, the way it affected me, and I thought about it. I'm 54.
Stop lying.
That's a nice lady.
No children, never married. And like you, I had made the decision very early that I didn't want to have children. And I think the only time, but there was a period in my life where I felt I wanted, but I think that was just biology talking, but it was too late anyway. But yeah, I had made that decision because I was just scared. And because I said I had gotten into this protective mode where I was just protecting everybody around me, especially young girls. I'm like, oh my God, I can't live my life like this. And if I was to have children, I definitely wouldn't want to have a girl. And that was my thought process. And then I realized two things. I detested older men. I just found them sleazy. I didn't want to be around them. Those that were attracted to me, I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. Because the people that violated my space over the years were always older men. And so I detested by them. And I just had commitment issues. I'd get into a relationship, and the minute I realized that it's getting too, I'm gone. And when I think at 14 years ago, I sat down and really analyzed my life, and I'm like, I realized that it was me. When I thought of the relationships that I've been in, some of them have been, most of them have been really good. I have been the one that have backed out, have walked away, and it's because of these kind of issues. I'm in the process now of writing a book, my memoirs, which will be out hopefully for my 55th year, my memoirs, and going back into my child life, and because I have to go there to write this book, I'm realizing that it's all those things that I've been through that have got me to this place. Not trusting, lack of commitment, the molestation. I realized the problems that my parents and family and the world was having with me while I was a child is because of what I was going through and how I was dealing with it in my way. You know, when I was being defiant or when I was being, they used to call me moody. It's because I just needed to get away. I wasn't verbalizing it, and that's what got me into writing too. That's how I got into writing. I used to just sit when I needed somebody to talk to, or I needed to get it out. I would write. I write, and then this nobody can see this, so I tear it out. But it was out of me. So again, it didn't stress me. It didn't once I got it out. And so I started writing, and you'll see that in some of my early writings, and you know, and it just kind of helped me in going. That's been part of my healing, narrative therapy.
Karen, let me hear yours. Tell me about your relationships, your past relationships.
I don't do well with people who wants to be like ownership. Whose pussy is this?
Yours.
That just takes me back. There's like a swirl of memories and things like, okay, you need to go. Don't know what that is about. Don't know if you're a pedophile. Don't know but if you need to be called daddy, I'm not down with that. Certain things I don't want to be like, I need to do on my own. I don't need anybody taking my head that's like PTSD and shoving it into their crotch. You may end up coming back with a surgery. Don't do that. So I'm just saying, like, for real. So
no holds barred.
So I'm just saying, like, those, but it's real. You want it to be real. Women who go through sexual abuse and trauma, there are certain things sexually that could become a problem for a man that they have in a relationship. And if they want certain things, then that guy's not going to be for you. Because, you know, I don't deal with, like, creepiness that makes me feel like I'm a kid again. Don't ask me to dress up in, like, schoolgirl costumes. Because my only thing on that is that, what do you really want? What are you doing when you're not here? What kind of porn are you looking at on the internet? So I have, like, severe trust issues with that, too. So when you're on the computer and you're slamming the screen and all that, I'm going to go check. It's not because I'm insecure. I just need to make sure I'm not with a rapist. And I feel like every woman, with a child or without, you need to know what your men are into, why they want to be called certain things. Why would that be appropriate for you to be called daddy by your wife? That situation that happened to me in the dark. I was a husband of 20 years. I'd have to tell him, don't do anything in my sleep or whatever, because you may end up getting hurt. Because my first memory is like having that weight on me, and now I feel like I need to be I got to protect myself. So I jump up and I may grab you on the throat or do something, foolish. So, so that makes it hard for some men to have relationships with women who've been sexually abused. And a lot of women don't tell their husbands or boyfriends or whoever they're with that they were raped or they were sexually molested, because they don't want the shame and they don't want them to use it against them. Some men do. When you get in arguments, they'll say stuff like, that's why you get raped when you whatever, da da da. So, a lot of women don't share that with you. Some women are with people 20, 30 years and their husbands don't know that they were raped.
But I think on the flip side, Leo, I'm sorry. Yes, I think on the flip side is that a lot of women who were abused have issues accepting niceness. Like, if you're too nice, what the hell you want? Why are you treating me so good? So we're used to abuse. So anything that's not abuse, anything that feels like love and compassion and caring, we start questioning. Yeah. What the hell is your motive? And he's weak. He is weak. Like, you need to be abusive. What the hell's wrong with you? So men really don't know how. I wish we came with a handbook. I really do wish we came with, because our experiences are vastly different. Our reactions to the experiences are vastly different. So even though we might go through similar circumstances, how we react is going to be different. So for a guy walking into a situation like this, one day I could accept all that love and support and tenderness, and the next day, like, you look too much like my beauty. It feels too much like grooming.
Yeah.
Like, what do you really want? So it's hats off to guys who know, who support. I just had someone call me because he's so concerned about his wife, who hasn't really quite dealt with her issues, and I love him so much for doing that, because it just shows the level of love and compassion and care and all that he has for her. He knows what's happened. She just refuses to confront and deal. But for him to go above and beyond, instead of running away, right, and casting her off as damaged and broken and what have you, he's looking for ways to help her.
Good thing.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. You ready to answer that question?
I don't do relationships. No, I've had struggles since forever with relationships. I'm pretty much a loner, very independent, do everything on my own. I've always lived on my own since I was 17. I tried living with a guy once, and then he tried to do like an ownership thing, and I was like, boy, bye.
You say you have a 9-year-old?
I have a 9-year-old, and me and her father are not together. It is challenging sometimes to raise her alone, but then sometimes I think about it and I'm like, why, dear, I think you like it like this. But the whole point is, I've never really done relationships, and I convinced myself that I didn't want to do relationships because it takes a certain level of trust, and I haven't until now really dealt with the fact that I really don't trust men. And so now I'm getting to the point where I'm able to be open, I'm able to be honest. I don't think you're intentionally out to hurt me, or you're gonna do something crazy. So I'm extra protective with my daughter. I think I prepare my daughter to the moon and back in case of anything. So, and when she gets to a certain age, I will share with her, just like I did with my sister. But relationships and we are evolving. We're in an evolution. But we've gotten better, though. I'm very proud of where I am.
Okay.
For me, I don't know. It's always been an issue of trust, and it's also an issue of knowing my own self-worth within relationships. Which, for me, for the past 3 years or so, which is when I finally, like I was telling you earlier, like I went through that process of doing the visualization, seeing my perpetrator, and forgiving him in that moment. Which for me was a very difficult process, but it freed me up, because what I was realizing was in all my relationships, it was the same patterns. It was the same patterns of me, like, not communicating, having this like pocket within myself where I would go, like as a little child who was sexually abused. It's like you have to find like a pocket within yourself to go as like your safe space. So in relationships, I didn't really know how to communicate when things weren't necessarily going very well. I would just go into my pocket and I'll stay there, and then the other person is having the relationship by themselves. You know what I mean? Or I'll pull back, or I'll just stop calling, or I'll take a break whenever I felt like it. So and it was also like issues of trust, because with my father, I saw that he was someone who she cheated a lot, and my mother stayed. And so initially for me, within my early relationships, when I saw that, I thought that, all right, as long as it's not in my face, you can't forgive it. And then I learned that no, like I should be valued. I should value myself first, though, right? Like I have to value myself first before someone else is going to value me. So my relationships have been issues of trust, me not valuing myself, so therefore the other person wasn't valuing me not being able to communicate very well, because I have this like place within myself that I go when I don't know how to verbalize what I really need to say. And so within the past 3 years, as I confront my issues of sexual abuse and confront forgiving myself too for the situation, because I felt like I blamed myself a lot of times. It was my fault. I should have told someone, but I didn't, and so that's the reason why my abuse continued over numerous years. So just going through that process, I felt like it wasn't a good time for me to be dating. I need to just deal with myself. And
how long is that going to be on hold?
Evolving. Honestly, I feel better now. I feel better.
She's ready.
Now.
She's ready.
I feel like I'm ready.
Yes.
Before I really did it, So I just sometimes we need to just take that time for ourselves too, and just deal with what we need to deal with, and not feel like you need to jump, because I feel like sometimes with issues of sexual abuse, it's like you jump from person to person to person, because you feel like you need that person to validate you in a way. And so it's like, how can you pause and say, I don't need this person to validate me, let me stop and just deal with myself, and I don't need a man right now, I don't need to have sex with nobody right now, I just need to deal with myself and heal. And you're not gonna fully heal, it's always a work in progress, but at least heal some of the things that keep showing up in your relationships and prevent you from moving forward.
I want to say something really quickly.
Okay.
I know this is an interesting perspective on some folks who've been sexually abused. We did a documentary in Jamaica, and probably let's say 9 out of the 10 girls were in lesbian relationships, because it was a complete switch for them, because they equated man with abuse. And so they were now fully fledged lesbians. But more interestingly was that they were all homicidal, not suicidal. They were all homicidal.
So they would hurt people.
They would hurt people. And I remember one girl telling it like it was, and she said, in the taxi ride over here, this is in Jamaica, all she kept thinking was how she could just grab something and choke the taxi driver. Man, that didn't do anything to her. Didn't do anything to her. But that was the abuse manifesting, right? And it was shocking, because yes, I know about the suicidal tendencies, right? When we want to hurt ourselves.
Yes, and not to hurt somebody else.
They're all of them. Every last one of them was homicidal.
It's a topic that you and I need to get into. But I want you all to think about your last 1 minute. So I'm going to ask you now, in the sense of wrapping up this. I hope you guys have found something in this that's useful to you. But I hope we can get an opportunity to see. I'm going to share any comments that's out there. I didn't turn on my phone to get some comments, but in the meantime, please. I start from the other side, Stan.
You sure?
Yeah, tell her.
You want to give me a chance to practice and
Yes, Karen.
Yes, all right.
You have your 1 minute. Last word.
Therapeutic. It's always helpful for me to be able to share, because for so many years I was silent. And so I feel like if talking about it and letting people know that they can talk about all of it, not just the parts that say, oh yeah, look at me now, and put on a show, that people know that this is a real thing that's happening that affects people's lives for the rest of their lives. And for me, talking about it always helps me, make it shorter and shorter.
Great.
The pain minimized.
Julie.
Oh, I think it's amazing, and this is my status a few days ago, that when you can tell your story in all its gory details without crying about it, you're onto something good. So start talking.
Yes, good to hear. Sue?
Definitely start talking. You can't talk right. Very therapeutic, and just live your truth. Get to know your truth. Get to know you. I'm in love with me, and I think that's the biggest thing. And in knowing who I am, knowing my truth, living my truth, and telling my truth, it's allowing me to heal even more, if there's more healing that can be done. I mean, like Karen said, every day you just get a bit stronger, you get a bit, a little bit, you peel away at something else. So just live your truth and live in hope?
I would say just find, like you're saying, find a way to confront the issue. If it's not necessarily talking to someone about it, you try to find your own way of confronting the issue or the perpetrator. If it's, even though you don't necessarily need to physically speak to them, try to find a way, whether it's by writing, whether it's by actually sharing your story in a public way, or sharing it with close friends or family, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through visualization. Find different ways that might work for you, that you can confront the issue and confront the perpetrator, and just slowly start breaking some of those emotional ties that the sexual abuse has on you, and that will allow you to start unraveling different parts of yourself and issues that you might need to confront as you move forward with your relationships. Romantic relationships.
If there are any, right?
I'm saying romantic relationships or platonic, or just relationships in
because it does
general.
affect your platonic relationship too.
Right, exactly.
All right.
I would say, I guess the first words that come to my mind are, I still have power, so that means you still have power. Maybe that's why I call myself the power, but I refuse to let anyone, no matter who it is, no matter how powerful they may seem, and I know they might seem really powerful, but I refuse to let anybody take away my power. So whether you're writing it, whether you're meditating, what I'm about to say might sound really spooky, but you can connect with me. You can connect with all the ladies here sitting talking to you right now. You have the power in your mind, the power of your thought, the power of your spoken word to connect with us and know that you're not alone, and feel into us for whatever you're going through, whether you're a child, whether you're an adult right now dealing with that pain, or it's happening to you right now. Just go deep within yourself and then just say, Quadera, Karen, Natasha, Susan, Julie, I need you right now. We all have God within us, so you can connect with that power within us and know that you're not alone, and you still have power, so much of it that you haven't even tapped into yet. So you got this.
Amen.
Wow.
Leo, thank you. Thank you for standing on the side of decency and what's right, and for giving us a platform to share our stories and to humanize the statistics that are out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pretty good.
For being a man against nasty.
My name is Leo Gilling. I thank these ladies for being here with me this evening. Again, coming from leogilling.com, and I'm sure that we are going to be having more discussions on this topic.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.